Hello, this is Hassan Al Khalili, and bringing you a lective series on how to pass the oil the oil sands exam. Um, First, I like to start off with the basics: the who, what, where, and the where, what, and why, and who. So, the first question you'll probably see on the test would probably be, where are the tar sands located? So, where are the tar sands located?
Where are the tar sands located? Canada. Where in Canada? Alberta, Athabasca, Cold Lake, and the Peace River. Other countries: Saudi Arabia, Iran, Kuwait, Venezuela, and Iraq. What are the tar sands? Tar sands are basically oily soil. They are sticky deposits of bitumen mixed with sand and clay, which require enormous quantities of energy and water and several stages of industrial processing to extract and turn into usable crude oil. Why do we have the tar sands slash oil sands? Okay, Alberta's oil sands are a growing contributor to the world oil supply and a stable energy source for domestic and international markets, for example, like the United States. Who controls and runs the oil sands? Number one is foreign corporations, and number two is some are controlled by national government, which is like, for example, Stephen Harper. Oil, how do they acquire oil from the sands? Oil sands are recovered using two main methods. One is open pit mining and in situ drilling. Bitumen, which is mixed with the sand. The truck carries a lot of sand. They separate bitumen from the sand. The trucks dump the oil sands in the hopper for crushing. The conveyor belts move in the sand. The secret to separating bitumen from the sand is hot water. Hot water is mixed with the sand and virtually melts the thick bitumen so it separates from the sand, and this process is called extraction. Bitumen gets broken into different compounds and gets put in big vessels called cockers. From the, from the cockers, these new producers go to a bunch of other vessels for more processing. This is called upgrading. Upgrading creates fuel, creates like diesel and jet fuel. Another way to get bitumen out of the oil sands is some places oil sands is buried too far underground to mine with big trucks and shovels. There's something called SAGD, which stands for Steam Assisted Gravity Drainage. Involves way more hot water and they use steam. Steam gets injected underground in the oil sands. It melts the bitumen just enough so it lets go of the sand grain and then oil comes to the surface. And then it goes to upgrading. What is the history of the oil sands? 100 million years ago, where dinosaurs ruled the planet Earth, and Alberta was covered by a warm, shallow ocean, billions of tiny creatures died and piled up on the sandy ocean floor, then eventually formed into bitumen. Canada's oil sands have drawn interest for more than 200 years. Historical documents date back as far as 1715 when James Knight, factor of Fort York, wrote in his journal about gum or pitch that follows out of the banks of river, the Athabasca. His is the first report by a European regarding the oil sands deposits in Western Canada. 1875, it was a botanist who recognized there was potentially valuable petroleum resource in the area named John McCann. During and after the World War 1944 to 1918, Canada became increasingly aware that it was almost entirely dependent on virgin oil. The first commercial sale of bitumen from the oil sands occurred in 1930. The beginning of the modern-day commercial oil sands development began in 1953 when the Great Canadian Oil Sands Consortium, which became Suncor Inc., Imperial Oil began production at the first commercial in situ project in Cold Lake in 1885, with production exceeding 140,000 barrels per day by 1989. Other companies or constructions that have joined the Alberta oil sands boom, and they are now members of RAMP, include Albanian Sands Energy Inc., Shell Canada Limited, Canadian Natural Resources Limited, Petro-Canada Oil and Gas, OPTI and Canada Inc., Nexen Inc., Husky Energy, Total EMP Canada LT, and Bridge Mountain Resources LT. Through projects developed by these and other companies, bitumen production from the oil sands reached 1.255 million barrels per day in 2006. As Mr. Domeril described, finding an efficient and economic process of separating the oil from the sand is an ongoing challenge. Technology has improved continually with each decade, and many of the most significant milestones have only recently been achieved. Making the most of this incredible resource truly is a work in progress.
Who and what benefits from the oil sands? People like us who use energy products that arrive from oil sands. Who? Americans. An increased employment for 600,000 Americans by 2035 from the Alberta oil sands. Also, it's an increased energy security. So an increased energy security as well as money generate about $775 billion in GDP by 2035. Who and what is harmed by the oil sands? Who? The First Nations, because it's destructive to ancestral lands, and some even got cancer from drinking water and less food for them because they can't fish because the fish are all full of chemicals. What? Our environment, because they're letting off cancer-causing chemicals in our air and water, and they're cutting off forests and trees. And water pollution, roughly 300 million gallons. How do people benefit? Well, number one, the public, because it will help keep oil prices relatively low. We will all save money on gas. Number two, it'd be the Native Americans. There'd be a lot of job openings, and it's a big economic driver in Alberta. How are people and animals harmed? Native Americans, animals like birds and moose and salmon are getting harmed by the toxic ponds. Some First Nations getting cancer by drinking toxic waters caused by the oil sands. There's a wide spread of habitat destruction both on land and water, as well as not having that many fish to go out and eat.
How does the future of the oil sands look like? It's gonna be an energy superpower. They're going to cut down the land, and then after they're finished borrowing the land, they turn it back into nature. They're gonna try to add a bigger pipeline going to the United States. More people may die of cancer, and there'll be more fish. Canadian oil production will more than double over the next 2 decades. Right now, 3.2 million barrels per day last year. In 2030, there'll be 5.2 million barrels per day. So meaning there will be more jobs and a more big economic driver in the future, as well as new markets. What are the two main camps on this issue? One of the main camps is called MICATS, which stands for Michigan Coalition Against Tar Sands Groups. Why? Well, they're trying to get rid of the Enbridge's Line CB pipeline. This is the same pipeline and company responsible for spilling over 1 million gallons of tar sands oil into the Kamloops River in the 2012, which is still poisoning Kamloops community members as we speak. What happens when they protest? Well, they all got sent to prison for resisting and obstructing. The second group is called Climate Camp, There are environmentalists and even some First Nations. What's my opinion? My opinion is that the governments and the leaders responsible and the corporations to stop running the oil sands, because the tar sands have too many cons and they have pros. If you were to add up the cons and the pros of the tar sands, you can see that there's more cons than there are pros. Um, as we all know that the tar sands bring the planet and other faraway countries like the USA a lot of dirty oil and open up quite a lot of job opportunities, as well as but in my opinion, it's not worth it. It's absolutely not worth it because we can have energy independence and open up future jobs and goals without the oil sands by simply changing our ways, by riding the bikes and taking the sky trains. So in my opinion, I would say to stop the tar sands so we can save water and stop destructing both land and water into ancestral lands. Stop the tar sands. Will the tar sands ever stop? How it looks right now, not anytime soon. Government makes, and private corporations make too much money. Gas prices will go up, which people don't want. Workers with oil sands will lose their jobs. The USA has to find new way to buy oil. And in conclusion, no, the oil sands will not stop anytime soon, but maybe in the year 2060.